Hi there, thanks for stopping by for a bonus episode of Mr. Ed Makes. And in this episode, I'll be making this holiday cottage ornament. It has 10 LED battery powered lights that are attached to the back, and it's perfect for the holidays. Set some cards around it, and it just looks really cute. So let's get started. I take a piece of cardstock and I take some small twigs that I found, and I'm framing out the house shape. I kind of outline it on the paper so that when I reapply the sticks, they'll fit perfectly. So I set those sticks aside and I add some watercolor to make this face of the house look like stone. I'm kind of going for like a terracotta kind of appearance. Maybe some stones, like little pebbles that have worn through. And I'm stiffening the paper with some glue and a decoupage technique with strips of tissue paper. And this is going to give it its texture, and it's also going to give it its heft, so it can hold all of the decorative embellishments. So once again, I'm adding some glue. This time it's mixed in with some watercolor. I'm using orange and purple to give me this nice terracotta brown color. And when the glue and watercolor dry, it dries a little bit darker. So you have to be aware of that. So if you're going for that exact color, once it dries, it's not going to be that. So you have to think ahead. I draw in a door. I want a kind of a round door, and I draw in this whimsically shaped window. You know, this house it doesn't have to be perfectly proportioned. It's kind of whimsical and fun. So it can be, you can lean a little bit. You can see the sticks are a little bowed and the roof's a little bowed, and that's just going to add to its charm. So now I'm going to glue the frame of this house down. I start with the walls there on each side, and then I add sticks for the roof. I've cut out a hole, you can see, for the top window, the loft window. And I'm just adding a little bit more glue underneath the sticks because they don't fit flush. So you kind of have to build up the glue a little bit so they'll stick well. You can use hot glue for that, probably works really well. I use white glue here just to show that it can work with that as well. So you take a pine cone and you cut the petals off and set those aside. We're going to use that to shingle the roof here in just a little bit. So adding a little bit more glue to the edge again to build it up. It makes sure those sticks hold really well, because we're going to have to cut away the paper, and if the sticks aren't attached to it well, it'll pull away when you try to cut it. So once that's dried, you can see how it's a little bit darker now, and it has a nice texture on it. Kind of looks like blocks. Take the pine cone petals and clean up those edges with some scissors, and then with some glue, of course, just add those on there. And you're going to start at the bottom and work your way to the top on each side, and you're going to join the top with one final petal. You can certainly use hot glue to attach these. It would hold them really well, and you'd be assured that they'd be stuck to it really well. The next thing I do is I take the window part that I removed and the door part that I removed, and I'm going to add those back to it. I've cut the removed window part in half so that I can have shutters, and I'm going to color those a little bit green. I was dithering back and forth with whether I wanted them to be green or red, so in the end they ultimately turned out to be red. They could be any color you want, and if you don't like the color they are, just color over them. I mean, it's pretty easy. I did the same thing with the door, and I'm mixing watercolor and glue because I kind of want to build up it's just cardstock, so it's really thin, so I want to kind of build it up a little bit with the glue so that it has some dimension. And the next thing I do is I took one of the clear acrylic sheets that I color. You can find me doing that in another video. I took a piece of that and taped it to the back in the top window so that it looks like there's glass in there with a little bit of color and texture. And then I added a pine cone petal as an awning over that window. And then with some green watercolor and glue, I'm adding some hobby foliage that you would use to like make a train set layout. I'm stuffing that underneath the eaves of that roof. And the next thing I do is take a dark brown and color the roof petals, and red to color the awning to kind of make it stand out, because it does get kind of lost in all that foliage. The glue in brown on the roof is just going to bring up the shine of that a little bit, and it's also going to protect it so that it can be dusted and it's not going to lose its appearance, because the pinecone petals will dull over time if they're not sealed in some way. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to add the shutters once I've embellished the roof and awning parts. And here you can see I'm going with the red because I want them to really stand out. Kind of glue them in place. Same thing with the door. And I had a little bit of trouble with the door. You can see it's cardstock, it's so flimsy, and when it's wet it wants to fold. And that's okay, it can look kind of warped. That's just going to add to the charm. But you don't want it to look like it's a piece of paper. So I set that aside and let it dry a little bit, and then I'm building up the corner there so that the door will have something to attach to and rest against, so that it can stand open. If it gets bumped, it's not going to tear off. Now at the bottom I add a larger stick that's going to form the ground, and I add some of the hobby foliage to the bottom, kind of make it look like grass, and it also hides the paper and gives it a nice base to rest on. And waiting for the glue to dry for this door, and I set it up in place with the marker just so it kind of stays open a little bit. And to hide the glue and also kind of show that the cottage is overgrown a little bit, I add the foliage to different places that make a little bit of sense. Up underneath the awnings, along the top, you know, just kind of hiding in the little creases and crevices here or there. I'm using the green colored glue because it adds a color texture to the foliage, so it doesn't all look like one patch of hobby moss. And now I'm adding some decorative botanicals. You can find these in like mixes of potpourri. I just grab a bag of those and I pull out the pieces that kind of look like what I want. So in this case I added some steps going up to the door, and I found these kind of curly seed pods that I'm using as a bush snugged up against the roof underneath, against the side under the window. Next thing I do is add a battery pack that has attached to it 10 LED lights, and these are white. They come in different colors. There are a couple dollars at hobby stores. And I'm just gluing those to the back. I'm using a low heat gun so I don't melt the wires in twain. Whenever I get the opportunity to use the word in twain, I feel like I've accomplished something that day. So once those are all attached, I attach a piece of paper to kind of hide everything, and it also is going to give those LEDs something to reflect off of so you can see the lights better in the window and the doorway. Now the cardstock is really thin and the lights show through, so I might use a couple pieces next time, but I think this turned out really well. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and give it a try. It's really fun. There's lots of ways to do it. Thanks again so much for watching, and if you like this video, thumbs up, and if you aren't already, please subscribe, and thanks again. See you next time.